Okay. Good morning and welcome to the 12 Attitudes and Responsibilities of Mastery. What we're going to talk about today is we're going to just explore these attitudes and responsibilities a little more in depth. Today will mostly be a review because we've reviewed these before on the Pioneering to Empower show. But in this weekly webinar, we're going to go more in depth into where these come from and the teachings that these comes from. So I'm just basically going to read off the screen. Part of the process of spiritual integration of our higher selves for the expansion of our consciousness, also referred to as enlightenment, involves reprogramming the way we think. Our thoughts create our reality and both our internal and external life experiences. The 12 Attitudes and Responsibilities of Mastery, when embodied and lived, will help to change our thought patterns, thoughts that we simply take for granted because they are part of our programming, our life experiences before birth, and our unique perspective on our hologram, or our external world. The changing of thought patterns actually changes the programming in our physical body and DNA. The 12 Attitudes and Responsibilities of Mastery are crucial to understanding what kinds of choices lead to what kind of outcomes, and provide guidelines regarding choices that lead towards oneness and the freedom from limitation and separation, including financial freedom, associated with true personal mastery. Join us every Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern, that's 10 a.m. Pacific, for more in-depth discussion of the 12 Attitudes and Responsibilities of Mastery and how they can be utilized to create true joy, happiness, inner peace, and personal prosperity, both emotional and financial. And I wanted to start off today by reading, this is something from the Tao Te Ching. It's called Oneness and Duality. These are poetic words on the beauty of oneness and oneness. Expressed, it loses its expression. Defined, it loses its definition. In its emptiness, it is the cradle of all existence. In its fullness, it is the creator of all things. Ever empty, it surrenders into the mystery. Ever full, it creates into the unknown. Of one source, they differ in name, yet both arise from the one. Oneness beyond one. Herein lies the key to all mysteries. Oops. Duality. Beauty is seen only because of ugliness. Greatness is known only for its lack. Emptiness and fullness are born of each other. Difficulty and ease create one another. Long and short grow out of each other. High and low reflect one another. Sound and listening complement each other. Front and back follow one another, and on it goes. Thus, the wise pay no heed, their acts without words showing the way. So do all things flow without thought, creating without possessing, acting without attachment, achieving without claiming achievement, existing without laying claim to existence. Thus moves all life unto eternity. And this is from the Tao Te Ching. I just really like that. So we use the attitudes and responsibilities of mastery to practice doing in order to be, versus being in order to become. And there are a lot of notations here to speaker 1, speaker 2, speaker 3. These are the assigned speakers at the time this was published in these teachings, and this is what I'm about to go through here. This explains a little bit about the history of these teachings and where they come from. And if you have any questions, write them down, because we will do a question and answer period. So if there are any terms that are unfamiliar or that you have a question about, write them down, because I'll be happy to go over them. The pre-ancient Melchizedek Cloister Emerald Order, or MCEO, perspectives teach of the inner Christos, or living God Spirit alive within all things, including the natural environment. Inner Christos philosophies are built upon understanding of what is referred to as the law of one. The inner Christos law of one perspective respectfully acknowledges the interconnection, interdependence, and intrinsic value of all components of reality, in recognition that the living consciousness, God Spirit, or inner Christos, is the tangible substance of consciousness and energy, from and of which all things manifest are composed. The word Christos, spelled with a CH, was originally spelled with a K, Christos, K-R-I-S-T-O-S, in the most ancient texts, and referred to the personal divine blueprint of conscious living God Spirit energy, of which all things and beings manifest are made. MCEO Inner Christos Law of One teachings, Templar Sciences knowledge, and pre-ancient history records of the CDT plate teachings represent an intrinsically congruent paradigm of universal understanding. Collectively, the MCEO teachings are referred to as the Emerald Covenant Freedom Teachings, and are a subset of a very ancient set of texts called the Mahabharata texts. And just as a note, the Mahabharata is an ancient portion of one of these Mahabharata texts. The Mahabharata texts provide a detailed understanding of the condition of humankind, such that if human beings are to survive, they need to become free of the template distortions they took on in order to incarnate, and help to heal the long-suffering land of Earth and its races as part of what's called the Christos Realignment Mission. These distortions manifest in our personal shields and fields. These refers to the personal energy fields and DNA, including the epigenetic overlay, also referred to as ego. The result being that a majority of our apartheid, and apartheid is a word that describes energetic receptors within your subtle energy bodies. They're like little antennae. So apartheid, think antennae. The result being that a majority of our apartheid are receptive to non-Christic frequencies. These distortions outpicture in how we interact with others, whether on a personal level or in society as a whole. In an ideally, in a Christic society, we naturally epitomize the impeccability of eonic behavior. The word eonic refers to a race called the Eoni. They are a Christic race, and this information is standard knowledge. This is a race that has no crime, there's no strife, no poor, no nothing, because everyone truly loves and respects each other. These standards are called the attitudes and responsibilities of mastery. These eonic standards do not embody the freedom or luxury to exercise our distortions. They do not permit us to hurl insults at one another, take another's inventory, point fingers, exhibit racism, etc. All things considered freedom of speech or freedom of expression. They are expressions, but of what? Stepping through ascension portals, which is an ascension portal is ascending to a higher state of being where you're more energy than you are matter. Stepping through ascension portals requires alignment of a certain percentage of our personal shields to the divine blueprint. and continuously open to primal life currents. Primal life currents, I'll get into those a little more later, but in religion, these were personified into the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, or Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. These are three primal life force currents, Mane, Manu, and Ire. One is the divine masculine, the divine feminine, and the Manu is the still point within, in the middle. The freedom teachings, or FTs for short, were given to help us heal and remember our true divine heritage, which facilitates the essential potentiality for our personal opening to the increasing influx of primal life currents. The attitudes and responsibilities of mastery are guidelines to help us develop a depth of composure, to set an environment in which divine right action and divine right order can be realized. In deciding whether to explore this area of mastery, we have to exercise the power of choice and then act. This can be called the choice and action mechanism. Embedded within this mechanism are the conditions of being aware, awake, and able. And that's something that we'll get into more as we get down the line in this. In order to more fully align with our heroic probability, this is our highest probability, we condition ourselves to be more aware of what we are doing and saying. We strive to be more awake or conscious of what we are actually creating in our hologram. Hologram, again, our personal reality. And then we act. We use the power of choice to either move towards a state of negative composure, decomposed, or a state of positive composure, composed, which results in either a plus or minus level of divine right expression and or divine right action in our hologram. This results in an essential shift in our relationship with time, cause, and effect, progressively recalibrating our relationship between the distortions inherent to the imperatives of survival, wants, and needs of victimizer issues to a self-confident expression of Christic preferences in our transactions, in our intercourse in daily life, with the localized planetary and galactic hologram. And this is, they're speaking of something in the future. Part of the process of spiritual integration of our higher selves or expansion of our consciousness involves reprogramming the way we think. Our thoughts create our reality and the life experience we have internally and externally. The attitudes and responsibilities, when embodied and lived, will help to change our thought patterns. Because they are part of the programming we currently carry, we take these thoughts for granted. Changing our thought patterns actually changes the programming in the personal shields. And successfully doing so presupposes that we successfully bring our conscious attention to the mindless patterns of our brain. Living with and as the A and Rs is a way of life, a way of being. Living with and as the A and Rs are conditions of perception. Without an inner and outer focus on the state and healing of our consciousness, we see life through filters, with no clarity of mind or thought. A life of Christic consciousness will lead us to the Manu point, that still point within, through which we can see clearly the higher choices necessary for divine right action and divine right order. The practical purpose of these teachings is to truly free and empower all through expanded consciousness and educated enlightenment, through which reverence, respect, love, and cooperative co-creation are fostered within the global community. These perspectives fully embrace geophysical planetary healing as an intrinsic consequence of personal alignment and expansion. I want to just pause here for a moment to see whether anybody has any questions about any of the terms that I've covered here so far. Let me, Kelly, if you want to unmute anybody, mute them for a second. We can see if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, everyone's unmuted.
Does anybody have any questions or comments that you'd like to make?
Well, I just enjoy this. I enjoy listening to this.
Okay, well, I'll keep going then. Okay, this is going to mostly be a review. We've gone over these before on the Pioneering to Empower show, but these are in essentially what the 12 attitudes of the attitudes of mastery are, and then the 12 responsibilities of mastery. Number 1, love, which is recognition of the truth of the all oneness. Now, when I say all oneness, what I'm referring to is the predication of these teachings as that the essence of all that is, or what I call God or God's source, is consciousness. Consciousness is the essence and the substance of which everything is made, and it's all frequency. So as you take consciousness and you reduce it in frequency, it goes through stages of transduction. And first it becomes sound, it becomes a form of sound, then it becomes light, then it becomes energy, and then, as we know, E equals mc squared, energy becomes matter. Energy and matter are interchangeable. So everything, literally everything around you, your desk, your computer, the hairs on your head, these are all, everything is consciousness. And so everything exists as part of God's source or the all oneness. So I just wanted to...
Michael,
yes.
I'd like to interject here when you were just saying that, because in my learnings over the last, 4 years or so, learning that the Bible taken literally is not correct, but that there's an allegorical message in there. And just by what you were talking about, the energy, the word, and the matter and all that, that's exactly what it's really saying there, that deeper allegorical meaning that's behind that.
Exactly. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. The Word was God. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yes. So when I use the term all oneness, this is what I'm referring to. I'm referring to basically all that is.
Right.
So love is recognition of the truth of the all oneness. And thank you for that, Kelly. That was very helpful. Number 2 is grace, which is allowing the all oneness to be what it is, regardless of whether it suits you. Living perpetual forgiveness. Now what happens is eventually, this has been my experience, is that I've been doing this for a while, and I've really been focusing on allowing whatever things are around me to be, whether I agree with them or not. And by taking that particular attitude, I find that forgiveness doesn't even become necessary anymore, because I'm not holding anything against anyone, because I'm choosing to allow. Doesn't mean allow everything, but allowing the all oneness to be what it is, regardless of whether it suits you. Number 3, gratitude. Appreciating the all oneness. Knowing your aliveness. Number 4, reverent respect. Acknowledging and giving to the all oneness. Number 5, responsibility. Co-creating with So wait a minute. Shouldn't say sowing. Something happened there. Serving is what I believe it should say. Co-creating with, serving, and being able to respond to the all oneness. Trust is knowing the power and love of the all oneness. Trust for me has become a very essential part of my being, because I've learned to trust my true authentic self, the true me, not the distortions in me, but the true me that's at the core of all that. And when I find that I can just implicitly trust in that, I have a couple of particular I am statements where I recognize this. This is just from my personal experience. Number 7, accountability. Being in a state of truth with the all oneness. This means recognizing that this, things exist. For example, a typical, well, I don't want to say typical, but an attitude that I've observed, especially like in New Age community, is this notion that you can just love and light everything all the way. And essentially what you're doing is you're denying that there's any inequity or that, evil or anything like that exists. And that's not being in a state of truth. That's being in a state of denial. Like I said, these are the attitudes, and we're going to get in more in depth into each one of these. Number 8, impeccability. Upholding and protecting the all oneness. Being impeccable. Now, none of us is ever going to achieve perfection, but we can achieve a level of impeccability. We can always do our very best in every moment. And I truly believe that even people who are harming us or who aren't particularly acting in a positive way, believe it or not, at the moment they're doing their best. But they have these filters, these distortions that I was talking about, that they perceive through, and so it causes all kinds of problems. So the idea is to overcome these things, to transcend them. Number 9, mindfulness. Loving, nurturing, and being attentive to the all oneness, including yourself. Mindfulness, becoming aware of what it is you're really doing. Fearlessness, recognizing the eternal infinite nature and unconditional love of the all oneness. There was a program on the National Geographic Channel last night about the nature of God, and they were talking about achieving eternal life. And I wanted to jump up and say, we are already eternal. We've just forgotten. So fearlessness is a recognition of the truth that our consciousness is eternal. The body isn't, but our consciousness, what we might call the soul, is eternal. It's not something we have to earn because it's something we already are. Engaged-Detachment, permitting the all oneness to be without assigning critique, condemnation, or value judgment. Understanding the isness, the nature, the isness of, and validating the all oneness. Engaged-Detachment means not being attached to any particular outcome. One of the things that we'll get into a little further is how this race I mentioned before, the Eoni, when it refers to Eonic behavior, they have preferences rather than opinions, and they're not attached to any particular outcome. So that's the ultimate expression of engaged detachment, to not be attached to any particular outcome. And number 12, joy, which is choosing to be the embodied all oneness. Love is the very nature of divine creation. It is the essence of what we are. Okay, then we have the 12 responsibilities of mastery, and I'm just going to, well, before we get into that, I want to stop here and see, do we have any questions or any comments? Anybody want to share anything or make a comment?
You're doing great.
Okay, all right.
It's awesome. Thank you. It's great.
Okay, these are the 12 responsibilities of mastery, and I'm just going to basically read through these. Number 1 is self-actualization. Self-actualization is freedom from the victim-victimizer blame game and the willingness to be accountable for all perceivable manifestations as direct projections of intended learning from your personal consciousness / DNA template. Some might call it your karma. What this means is accepting responsibility for everything that happens in your hologram. Now that's a big step, but once taken, it's probably one of the most empowering things that I have ever done. The victim-victimizer blame game, this is a game that has stages, and the way it basically starts is one person victimizes another, and then the other victimizes the other person back, and it just goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, escalating, and there are all kinds of manifestations of this. I think a lot of it's self-explanatory, but we'll explore this a little further. Self-sovereignty, which is freedom from the need for approval from or the need to rebel against any form of external authority, through understanding that you, as a manifestation of the God Spirit, of God's source, of God, have the ability to create personal freedom without violating the spiritual rights of others and without allowing others to violate your spiritual rights of being. Setting boundaries, respectful boundaries. I'm going to move my screen here. Self-containment, taking personal responsibility for and realizing that at all times you are accountable for directing personal energies. There is no one or no thing that upsets you and thus justifies or validates any personal spiritual misuse of reaction, idea, intention, or action. It is you who upsets yourself by allowing your emotional body to follow misperceptions of your mental body that tell you that your power lies outside of yourself. At any given moment, you can choose which words, associations, and ideas you will use as the filters through which you interpret an event. Things like upset, mad, hurt, or any other category of labeling, both conscious or subconscious, are all mental body filters, mind filters, that direct emotional and physical body function. The self-contained individual recognizes that at all times the freedom of interpretation exists, and thus a negative experience and its associated disharmonic energies of upset feelings can only exist as a personal interpretation of events. Accepting any less responsibility for the direction of personal energies will place you directly into the victim-victimizer blame game, or the VV game, as sometimes I call it, which can only take place among people who are placing their personal power and responsibility for manifestation onto externalized sources. They're not trusting themselves. They're not accepting full responsibility. No one or no thing has the power to upset you unless you give this power away. Self-containment comes when one recognizes that the direction of personal energies, whether physical, emotional, mental, in the form of ideas, beliefs, labels, or interpretations, both conscious and subconscious, is an attainable level of personal mastery, and it exists as an implied responsibility that comes with the gift of free will choice. The more responsible you become, the greater freedom and personal empowerment you will know. Excuse me for just one sec. Self-discipline. Accepting responsibility for directing personal energies toward, rather than in opposition to, the outcomes you desire to experience. The physical, mental, and emotional bodies have long been directed by the subconscious forces of the hidden shadow, creating within us urges, reactions, thoughts, impulses, perceptions, and feelings that often work counter or contrary to the life creations we desire to manifest. Part of spiritual mastery entails teaching ourselves to be consciously diligent in observing our own minds, emotions, and physical body talk, so that we may employ conscious redirection of subconscious shadow energies that run on autopilot. If we can learn to catch ourselves when these negative thought patterns or emotions run through us, we can use that moment of recognition to reclaim this errant energy and consciously use the power of affirmative attitude, remedial word choice, and direct energy redirection to direct opposing energies of the self into fulfillment of desired, constructive, spiritually mature creations. It takes a lot of self-discipline to become the lion tamer of the often roaring subconscious mind, but we do have the intrinsic power to help our subconscious shadow to evolve through loving but firm redirection into a cuddly lap cat that will gladly join us in our constructive co-creations. Self-discipline emerges when we consistently remind ourselves, to employ the spiritually correct thought, action, or attitude, even if we don't feel like it, when the shadow sneaks up from down under. That's the hardest part, is especially when you don't feel like it, is catching it. But the first step is catching it, realizing that it happens. So if you can find yourself realizing and catching it when it happens, you've already got one step of it. The next step is to make the decision, okay, the next time this happens, I'm going to do this. The shadow parts of our self surface so that we may see these parts of the self come to the conscious mind for healing, through which the conscious mind itself learns greater attributes of mastery. Through this process, the conscious mind itself can learn greater attributes of mastery. The next responsibility of mastery is self-love. It is our own responsibility to love and nurture ourselves through the limitless gift of divine spirit that moves through all of us at every moment. Genuine love must come from within and can only be gained through genuine spiritual connection to the eternal God Self and its inherent connection to all of creation. If we seek love on the outside in order to fulfill a personal loneliness or a lack within, we enter relationships as energy vampires. In doing this, we are seeking a substitute for our own personal God Source connection by tapping into the God Source embodied within other people or beings. This is not love. This is need. And this implies the lack of something essential, which in turn implies a limited personal connection to God's source universal consciousness. This is that inner Christos, again, that we're talking about. Such lack cannot be filled by external love. It can only be filled by recognizing the God within you, and thus recognizing that you are a living embodiment of absolute love. Once this is recognized, you will have the greatest love of all, God love, which is self-love. And from this position of divine power, you can go into the world seeking those to whom you can give this love, rather than seeking those from whom you can get love. When love is approached through self-love, the motivation is to give joyfully, knowing that anything you might need can be made manifest through the love of the active God source that you carry inside yourself. Self-love is a responsibility of spiritual maturity, spiritual integrity. Oh, excuse me, that's the next one. Sorry. I did an OCR scan of this. So, okay, the next one is spiritual integrity. This is the next responsibility of mastery, spiritual integrity. It is our absolute responsibility to choose to act with spiritual integrity at all times. There is no excuse to knowingly violate the spiritual rights of others, regardless of how poorly they may react to you. And sometimes this can be really tough. Spiritual integrity requires that we begin to look at what we are really doing in the way we live our lives. Do our eating habits violate the plant, animal, or earth kingdoms? Do our choices of words and actions show respect for other people and other life forms? Do we play the survival of the fittest lack game to give ourselves an excuse for unethical behaviors in money matters, such as showing our silent rebellion against the government by trying to cheat on taxes, or by showing up a fellow employee at work to prove that you are more worthy and thus more entitled to favor? Do you tell people what they want to hear in order to gain their approval and support, even if it is not fully true and does not reflect your personal needs or feelings? Do you try to get others to do your share as far as work or responsibilities? Do you use erroneous excuses such as race, gender, creed, academic or economic status, or sexual orientation to justify disrespectful, exploitative, or unkind treatment of others? Spiritual integrity requires that we take a good, hard, frequent look at how we conduct our lives, to face the areas of activity in which we are performing in less than spiritually congruent ways, and to employ active commitment and discipline to bring these areas of our lives into spiritual integrity. One does not get through the gates of heaven or anywhere else desirable. This is what I was talking about, ascension, passing through stargates, which is another whole story. But one does not get through the gates of heaven or anywhere else desirable by using excuses for not employing genuine, unfeigned spiritual integrity. Cultivating spiritual integrity is a major responsibility on the path of spiritual mastery, and it is the way the universe works. You cannot leave home without it. This means that there is a biological reality of spiritual integrity that manifests chemically within the DNA as a result of that state and focus of consciousness. If you do not possess a sufficient amount of spiritual integrity in your consciousness, neither will your DNA template. And though you might be able to pull the wool over the eyes of others, your own biology will eventually be your own taskmaster. Passage through any Stargate system requires a sufficient amount of chemically encoded spiritual integrity of consciousness. Appreciation. Our present society continually teaches us to want more, need more, be more, do more, etc. We are constantly influenced to perceive what is lacking in order to motivate us to buy more, work more, pay more taxes, and be good little consumer sheep. Very rarely do we stop to think about all that we do have, beginning with the gift of life and mental free will choice. Mental free will choice is something that no one can take away from you. Even if you're locked in a jail cell, you still have mental free will choice. You can still choose how you're going to interpret the experience. Through this distorted perceptual filter, we can cultivate a full-blown mutation of mental consciousness. In this mutated consciousness, we begin to believe that we are entitled, that someone owes us. God, the universe, our parents, our spouse, our children, our employer, the government, etc., etc. Once we fall into this you owe me mind trap, we set ourselves up for continuing self-created frustration as we place unrealistic and untrue expectations upon life, others, and ourselves. We can also get mighty angry or hurt when we find that the universe does not conform to our imagined pictures. No one owes us anything. If we feel we are owed, it means we are entertaining lack consciousness, and a void within the self is being recognized. If we give to another in order to receive for ourselves, such as do banks and often parents, spouses, or lovers, and the other does not pay back what we expected to receive, we may feel cheated, taken advantage of, or owed. In fact, these situations often emerge in our lives as lessons to teach us that giving should be done for the giving alone and not for the expected return. If we give what we desire to give for the joy of giving, we do not feel owed. If we live for the joy of living without forcing our demands or expectations upon life, we will not feel that life has shortchanged us. It matters not what your neighbor possesses, because in comparing ourselves to each other to see how we measure up to each other, we are in effect continually being distracted from seeing and utilizing the blessings that are our own. If we can work to cultivate the ability to appreciate even the smallest gifts, blessings, and gestures, we will begin to create a life that is at least half full instead of half empty. In terms of universal physics, what you focus your attention upon expands. What you resist persists, and what you do not give the energy of appreciation to will eventually demanifest right out of your experience. When you approach the world through the chosen filter of genuine giving, you are in effect becoming an electrical transmitter, sending energy out to the world around you. And when you release electrical energy in this way, you become more magnetic, as the sending out of energy creates magnetic vortices within the diotic grid of your Kathara anatomy, which is a subtle energy body anatomy. The magnetized diotic points then draw in more universal energy supply at a higher frequency and quality than the expressed energy to refill the energy void created by the giving. When you approach the world with the attitude of getting, this natural physics process becomes inverted, and the more you try to pull energy or grace from the outside world or from God or from the unified field, the more your energy becomes stuck in the diotic grid as miasms. The miasms will progressively reduce the quantity and lower the frequency of the natural energies you can internally draw from the universal supply. Giving, even in its simplest form of giving appreciation, keeps the natural energy flow moving. Whatever you give out will return to you amplified. This also works in reverse, however, and giving out a bad attitude of ego, arrogance, and garbage will cause more of the same to flow your way. Appreciate what you have. Love it. Find perspectives through which the joy of it can be known, and know that in the act of genuine appreciation itself, you will set loose the powers of manifesting more of what you desire and less of the illusion of lack. The universe owes me mind trip is one of the most powerful self-sabotage games in the world. Trade it in for consistent appreciation, and your world will progressively expand to hold the reality of the things you most desire. If you feel put upon by the world and resentful for having your desires unmet, you owe yourself something. You owe yourself a greater understanding of the nature of creation and better use of your personal power and energies within the life creation game. Say thank you to the God Source and to others more often to help yourself remember what things you have to appreciate, and many more of the kind will be sent along your way. I just want to take a moment here to say something that I noticed, and that is Kellyanne always says thank you, always. And that's a perfect example of appreciating what you have, and even in the simplest form, it's just saying thank you, because it just speaks volumes. Should I pause at this point, or do you guys want to continue? I can go ahead and finish this, and then we can stop then. It's up to you. Kelly?
Well, we got one more section to go, or?
Yeah, I can. Why don't I go for 10 more minutes, and then we'll stop. So, because this goes on.
Good.
This goes through all 12, and I think we're at number 6 or 7. So. I'll read 2 more, and then we'll pause, and we'll continue next week. Okay.
Thank you, Michael.
All righty.
You're welcome. See what I mean? Thank you. See? Perfect example. Very simple. Patience. God's source, has its own schedule. We can either acknowledge this intrinsic reality of manifestation and choose to work co-creatively with the God source within, trusting that together you and the universe will create the perfect divine right timing. And if that is not right now, there is a very good reason for this. Or you can let the ego self try to force its will upon the intrinsic nature of time. If time does not cooperate with your expectations, you can let that be okay and trust in divine right timing. Or you can progressively frustrate yourself with attachment to the artificial time of clocks and choose to believe that you cannot have what you desire just because it does not appear when you demand. If we learn to relax and realize that most things we desire we can indeed achieve in divine right time and order, we can learn to work co-creatively with the consciousness of time. We will often find that our lives will progressively better conform to our wishes, especially when we ask nicely rather than demand, and also when we trust the universal God source to do its part in our co-creation. Patience is a virtue that reflects our comprehension of the nature of universal order. Kindness. This is another real simple one. Like respect, kindness is a birthright, but one that is quite often overlooked and misunderstood. When we approach the world through genuine kind-heartedness, sending love and respect to all of creation in honor of the God force that lives within all things, we are again transmitting electrical energy of a higher frequency that will follow the mechanics of universal physics to bring more of like kind back to us through what's called universal backflow. Kindness is a gift we must first give to ourselves in order to have it to give to others, like love. You cannot give what you do not have. Kindness implies being conscientious and caring toward the needs, feelings, and desires of both the self and others, and to express this concern and caring in action, attitude, and intention. Give to yourself random acts of kindness, then pass along the gift to all who cross your way. Try being kind to the mean and grouchy neighbor, or the grouchy person who's having trouble with their account, can't find the right way to go, and gets frustrated. And you may help them rediscover the ability to smile. When we treat all things with kindness, we demonstrate that we acknowledge their intrinsic value as manifestations of God Source. And you will often find God Source lovingly returns the favor. I think we're going to pause here for today because we've been almost 50 minutes. So we'll continue next week. We'll pick up with conservation, and as soon as we finish going through the 12 attitudes and we finish with the 12 responsibilities, we'll go into it goes into a more in-depth, discussion, which we'll continue next week. But before we sign off, questions. Anybody have any questions or comments, please?
I have a comment. I mean, what a great place to end this. That last sentence to me was just so powerful. When we treat all things with kindness, we demonstrate that we acknowledge their intrinsic value as manifestations of God's source, and you will often find God's source lovingly returns the favor. That is so awesome. That, as a vegan, that just warms my heart.
Yeah. Kindness. It's actually quite simple, but it's like love. You can't give what you don't have. So if you don't have kindness for yourself, it's a little difficult to give to others. So it's something that you need to develop for yourself by being kind to yourself first and then to others, and then it just kind of works automatically. So
yeah. Beautiful.
This is just one of the best days of my life. I just love this. This has just been amazingly inspiring, and I learned a lot.
It's beautiful.
Very. And, there's not much out there like this. This is really cool and unique. And just, it resonates with me so much, and I have so much here that it's just, I love this, so I want to keep doing this with you and everyone that's here. I think it's important. I need it. I need the connection, first of all. And not need. I guess I'm not supposed to really need anything, right? But it really does assist me in my peace and in who I am. Like last night, I cried. I cried hard. I was in a deep pain, and it was something that I saw on the internet, and it had to do with some cows. And I just started bawling my eyes out. I'll start crying right now just thinking about it. So, I've changed a lot. And so I appreciate you, Michael, and I appreciate you very much, Kelly. Thanks.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Kellyanne, so much. Yes, and Michael, is it okay once we download this for either Kelly or I can create the YouTube and just keep adding to this?
Absolutely.
Okay. Awesome.
If you have any trouble accessing the recording, just let me know, because I've played with it a little bit.
Okay. All right. Well, are you going to put the recording out there once it gets finished?
I'll do that. It'll take a few minutes. It takes maybe an hour, I think.